Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this is part 2 of the soda can packaging design series. Today we'll be working on the illustration part of the packaging. Just a disclaimer, this is supposed to be a long in-depth tutorial. I will upload a short version of the entire process once I'm done uploading all the individual parts. This is going to be an 8 to 10 part series. If you haven't watched part 1, you can go on my channel and watch it from there. And now let's continue the tutorial. Okay, so this is the illustration that we'll be creating. So go ahead and download this file. The link will be in the description. This is basically a reference for you to create this illustration. So let me show you what my sketches for the illustration look like. The image on the left was my initial sketch, but it turned out to be extremely complicated and it didn't fit the vibe that I was going for, so I decided to simplify it. So the sketch for the new illustration is what you see on the right. To import the reference image, go to File, Place and locate the image that you want to open. And you can either click on the artboard to place the image or you can drag it out like this. Then go here and click on the Embed option. So by default, the images that you place inside Illustrator is only linked to the file. So that means that if you delete the original file, it will also get deleted from your working Illustrator file. So to prevent that from happening, you need to embed your image. So just click that option, and now if you delete your original file, the image will not disappear from your Illustrator file. Now we need to scale this image up a little bit. So hold Shift and drag your image outwards to scale it uniformly. If you don't hold Shift, it will stretch non-uniformly and we don't want that. So since we'll be drawing on top of this image, we don't want it to accidentally move. So we need to lock this image in place. So to do that, select the image and click Ctrl 2 on your keyboard, and this will lock the object in place. Now we need to draw these shapes. So for this I will be using the Curvature tool, but you can also use the pen tool. So let me show you both methods. With the pen tool, click on one point on the path and then go to a spot that's sort of far away and drag out a point like this, and that will curve the line. And now as you can see, the curve has a mind of its own. It's not really following the path that I wanted to follow. So I'm going to click on that second point once again, and this will reset the curve. So now I can curve it again properly. Also, if you cannot see this path, just change the stroke to black with an empty fill, so you get this black stroke. If there are any points that seem sharp like this, you can basically just use the direct selection tool and drag these blue dots to round the corners. So that's how you use the pen tool. But for curved shapes like this, I like using the Curvature tool better because it gives smoother and cleaner shapes. So to use the Curvature tool, you just need to select the tool and then click on the points of the path that you want to follow. There is no need to drag anything. The lines naturally curve as you drop more points. So it's a really efficient tool to create curves. To exit this shape, click Escape on your keyboard. And now you can go ahead and edit the paths by using the direct selection tool. Okay, so now let's edit this line a little more. So if you go here to the top, you can find the stroke panel. If you don't find it there, go to Window, scroll down, and you can find it here also. And all you need to do is change the cap to a round cap for now, and that will create a rounded end to your line. Now the next thing you need to do is right click and click on the Simplify button. So this deletes any unnecessary anchor points. For curves like these, the less anchor points there are, the better. So this tool basically helps you create a smoother shape. But you might find a few anchor points which are sharp like this. So again, just use the direct selection tool and round the corners. And now we'll use the very same process to create all these other shapes. So there are 3 steps to creating the perfect curves. Step 1 is to use your Curvature tool to create the basic shape. If you want to redo a point, just click Ctrl Z on your keyboard and start drawing again. And once you're done creating the curve, use your direct selection tool and edit your shape further. And once you're done with that, you can right click and click on the simplify tool to simplify the shape. But there's another tool that I want to show you, which is the smooth tool right here. So the smooth tool and the simplify tool are very similar, but what the smooth tool does is that it converts lines into curves. The simplify tool only deletes anchor points, so they work very similarly, but there is a slight difference, so you can choose whichever one looks better. There honestly isn't too much of a difference. And once you're done with that, edit your anchor points again with your direct selection tool and you have the perfect curves. Now that we're done creating the lines, if you compare it with our reference, they don't really look exactly the same. There's a lot of difference between the guide and our line here. So the first thing that we need to do is increase the stroke weight so it's closer to our reference. And now we need to create this size variation. So if you see, some parts of our reference are thicker than the others, and I will show you how to create this effect. Now if you didn't know, there are tons of ways you can make your line look more interesting in Illustrator. So if you go up to this panel, you will find these two options right here. This first one is the width profile. So this will give you lots of variation in the thickness of your line. And you can also change the way your line looks by selecting a different brush profile. This one doesn't look great, but there are actually tons of options. There's a whole brush library that you can play with. But honestly, we won't be using it today, but I just want to show you that these options exist. So you can play with these in order to create more interesting effects on your line. Today we'll be using the width tool, which is this tool. So what this does is it allows you to create variable thickness on your line. So click on the width tool and go to one end of a line. Make sure you're at the very end. If you're not at the very end, it creates this weird effect and we don't want that. So go to the very last point of your line and drag it out like this, and that will increase the width of the entire line. And now go a little further in and decrease the width, and that will create this variation in size. So you can basically vary the size of the line anywhere that you want, and that will help you create some extremely interesting shapes. Okay, so I've finished creating the line, but as you can see, our reference is slightly thicker than the line that we have made. So what we can do is just go to your stroke properties and increase the size a little bit. So now it's closer to the reference. And now if there are any parts that you think look off, you can go back in with the width tool and edit those same points. So let's take a closer look at our line. So the white points that you see right here are the width points that you have already edited. These are the locations on the line where you've already used your width tool. Whenever you're creating any changes to the width, do not edit the line too close to one of these white points, because then it will create this weird effect. So make sure that your white points are spaced slightly far away from each other. And the blue points on the line are not the width points, they are the original anchor points of the line. So you also need to make sure not to select those. So I'm going to adjust the points a little more. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to draw in all the other curved lines that are present on the reference here. And I will apply the same effect to all of them. This might take a while, so take your own time, but I'm going to speed this video up now. Okay, so now that I've created all the lines, I'll show you how to apply gradients onto your lines. So first make sure that your stroke color is in front, and then click on this button right here which will apply the gradient. So by default it will be a black and white gradient going from left to right, but that's not what we want. We want the gradient to follow the path of our curve. So we need to open our gradient panel. It might automatically open for you, or if you don't find it, go to Window, scroll down and open the gradient panel, and then click the follow along stroke button. And what this does is that the gradient will follow the path of our curve. So if there are any overlapping elements, it will create a nice effect. There are also other gradient options, but we won't be working with any of them. This is where you change the color of the gradients. In order to add new stops, you just need to click in the middle. You can also drag the diamond button to adjust the spread of your color. Now I need 6 individual stops, so I will click until I get 6 stops. And now to change the color, click on one of the stops, click on this color picker button and select your color. Now I already have a color swatch ready, so I'm going to color pick, but you can also double click on your stop and it will open a color panel, and you can change the colors from there also. Now I'm just going to create my gradient setup. So I realized that I actually need 7 stops. So basically I'm trying to create this same gradient on the left and the right. So the blues will be at the end and there is a pink at the middle. So to duplicate a stop, I'm just going to click Alt and hold the first stop that's on the very left, and I will drag it to the very right. So holding Alt on anything in Illustrator will duplicate that object. So this is a quick way to duplicate the stop instead of adding another stop and then changing the color again. Now I want to give this shape the same gradient that we have applied. So first I'm going to select my gradient and then I will draw a rectangle like this. Then I'll go to Window, Swatch and open up the Swatches panel. And now if you select your gradient rectangle and click the plus icon, a new swatch will be created. And then if you select the shape and click on the gradient swatch, the gradient will be applied. But as you can see, this gradient follows a left to right pattern. It doesn't follow along the stroke. So go to the gradient panel again and click on the follow along stroke option. Now I'm going to add the same gradient to all the other shapes. The reason we create the swatch instead of directly color picking is because color picking might copy all the properties, and if you do shift color pick using the eyedropper tool, it might only copy one particular color instead of the entire gradient. So that's why you need to create the swatch first, add it to the swatches panel and select the gradient from there. Okay, so I think giving every single line the same gradient will make it look a little monotonous. So I'm going to create one more gradient. So this one is going to be a blue only gradient. I have a new color. You can see the color code on the screen, and I'll put that color in the middle. I'm also going to brighten it up a little bit because I realized that the color was slightly dull. And then I've also added the darker blues at the very end and a mid blue in the middle just as a transition color. And this is the new gradient. And I'm also going to click on the follow along stroke button just like we did before. And once I'm done with that, I want to copy the same gradient to the other 2 lines that we have here. So again, just like before, I'm going to create a rectangle with a gradient stroke, and I will add that to my swatches panel, and I'll use the panel to apply the gradients to my remaining 2 shapes. You can also adjust the spread and the colors a little according to the shape. And now we're done with all the gradient strokes. Now we're going to create these leaf shapes. So you can use the pen tool or the curvature tool for this. So here I'm using the curvature tool. You just need to click on the outline to create the shape. So one thing I hadn't shown you before is how to create a sharp corner using the curvature tool, because the curvature tool mainly just creates curves. So you basically just need to go to the corner that you want to be sharp and double click on that spot like here. So if you double click, you'll get a sharp corner, and then if you single click, you'll get a curved corner. And that's how you create this shape using the curvature tool. You can also use the pen tool. You just need to click on a point, go to a faraway point and drag it out to create a curve and then create the shape. But I'm also going to show you another tool to create these shapes, and this is probably my favorite way to create the shape, and that is using the Blob brush tool. So you can find the Blob brush tool underneath the Paintbrush tool in your toolbar. So if you long press the paintbrush icon, you will get this list and you'll find the Blob brush tool. So there is a difference between the two, and I'll show you what that is. So first I'll select the paintbrush tool. You don't need to do this, I just want to show you the difference. And if I fill out this shape using the paintbrush tool, as you can see, this shape appears to be a fill, but it's not really a fill, it is just a collection of strokes. So if you look at the fill and stroke colors, you can see the fill is completely empty and the stroke has a gradient to it. It's just that the size of the stroke is so high that it appears to be a fill. If I reduce the size of the stroke, you can see that the shape completely gets destructed because it's not a real fill. Now you can convert your strokes into fills by expanding the object. So if you go to Object, Expand, you can expand the object and now it's a bunch of little shapes. And you can also convert it into one single shape by using the Pathfinder tool and hitting Unite. But it's really complicated and it's a very messy process, so that's why I don't use the paintbrush tool to create shapes. You can use it to create strokes. Like I can try to recreate this stroke outline, so I'll just draw using the paintbrush tool and I can create a pretty decent shape. But the only problem is that you cannot use the width tool on it, so you won't be able to create the size variations. So that's why I don't really use it for strokes either. But when you select the Blob brush tool and try to create the same leaf shapes, you can see that it is a fill, it is not a stroke, it is one single object. And if you don't like this object, you can even add on to the same objects just by drawing on top of it. So that makes drawing shapes extremely convenient. So that's why I really like using this tool. Now when I don't have a reference, I just use the Blob brush tool to create my shapes. But when I do have a reference and I want to follow the outline precisely, I first reduce the size of my shape by using the left square bracket on my keyboard, and I try to draw over the outline, and now I will fill the inside of the shape. You can fill it using the Blob brush tool, but an easier method to do it is just by using the pen tool and selecting the inside of the stroke that you've already created. So make sure that your pen tool points are not going outside the outline that you've already created. So now you have two shapes. You have the outline that you made using the Blob brush tool, and you have the pen tool shape. Now I like to select them both, open the Pathfinder panel and click Unite. So that will unite your two shapes, the outline and the fill, into one single shape. You can also use the shape builder tool to unite it, but the Pathfinder tool is just easier. Now that your main shape is ready, you can use the simplify or smooth tools to make your shape even more refined. You can also use the direct selection tool to round out any sharp corners. These are all techniques that we went over earlier in the video, and you can use the same methods along with the Blob brush tool to fill in the rest of the shapes. So go ahead and make all the leaf shapes. You don't need to create these shapes at the bottom right here, just create the leaves, and I'll show you how to create the tiny shapes once we are done with the leaves.